What's up, everybody? Welcome to The Sweat. It's Friday, which rocks. But before we can let loose, we got 55 minutes of The Sweat to get to. As for what's on the menu, obviously, conference tournament week in college basketball continues. We're going to get our experts' NBA and NHL picks, react to the latest NFL news, and our NASCAR expert, Jeff Ulrich, returns to talk about this week's race in Phoenix. Don't worry, Pierce Dietrich will be there too. And of course, baseball is back. That means Steve Buchanan's job is secure, and he will be on to react to the new agreement. So let's get it started in the association. Say hello to DraftKings contributors Gary and Thorne, Matt Meiselman, and Jeff Pratt. Guys, 10-game slate tonight. Break it down for us with some NBA building blocks. So, Gary, is there a guard that you should start your lineups around here?
Yeah, we've kind of come full circle again on Devin Booker, who, when we first talked about Booker, when Chris Paul got hurt, he was under 9K, and we were all kind of like, well, he shouldn't be under 9K ever when Chris Paul is not playing, and now Booker is back. If there was any sort of minutes restriction, it certainly didn't appear like it coming out of health and safety protocols on Wednesday. I think he'll be available for his full allotment of minutes tonight against the Raptors. And he's back under 9K, which means he's super viable again. I mean, you look at what he's done so far this season when Chris Paul is not on the court, the level
Welcome back to the Sweat. Some technical difficulties. It happens to us all. So, Garion, I'm going to go back to you. We were talking NBA building blocks, 10-game slate. Is there a guard that you want to start your lineups around? I really need to know your answer.
Yeah, everyone's been waiting with bated breath. Devin Booker, he's too cheap. If he's under 9K when Chris Paul is out of the lineup, you basically just have to put him into a lineup. And his first game back was a pretty good indication of why. He only played 33.2 minutes, still had 9 assists, still went over 55 DraftKings points. He probably has the potential to play even more minutes if this game stays competitive against the Raptors tonight, coming off of the health and safety protocols. So I just think Booker under 9K is a lock in these circumstances.
All right, Matt, what do you think when you're looking at the guards?
Yeah, I think we have to look to New Orleans. I know this is going to be sort of the obvious team tonight. Brandon Ingram is out, and CJ McCollum now is out for health and safety protocols, which means that there are just so many players playing increased roles for New Orleans. Even though it's going to be a popular situation, I think the chances that everyone's bad there are just close to zero. So Devontae Graham in particular is $4,300. He was already playing an increased role because Ingram was out. Now with McCollum out, he probably moves into the starting lineup, and he could be 70% owned on tonight's slate, but I still think you have to have him because $4,300 for a player playing as much and probably shooting as much as Graham is, it's totally off because this McCollum news just happened and there was just no time for pricing to adjust for it. So I think you do almost certainly have to play Graham tonight, but if you decide not to, Jose Alvarado is probably his backup for tonight, $3,100. I think he makes for a decent pivot also.
All right, Jeff, what do we think? You're looking at guards. Who do you want to put in your lineup?
So to agree with Garion, I think Devin Booker is the clear top option for me. But if I'm not going with Booker, I'm going to pay up for DeJounte Murray. Yes, he's 11K, but you're paying up for guaranteed production. Murray has scored 57-plus fantasy points in 4 straight games. He's also seen an expanded usage rate over that stretch, as it has crept over 29% in 3 of those 4 contests. The Spurs aren't very good this year, but everything runs through DeJounte. He leads the team in points, assists, and steals, and he's second in rebounds only to Jakob Poeltl. Like I said, you're paying up for guaranteed fantasy points with him.
All right, Matt, which forward is a must-play in your opinion?
I don't think there's too many yet, but we do have a ton of injury news today. And the situation I'm looking at is the Dallas Mavericks, where Dorian Finney-Smith in particular is questionable, which means that Maxi Kleber and Reggie Bullock, who are $3,700 and $4,200 respectively, possibly even Davis Bertans at $3,100. I think any of those 3 forwards, Kleber is probably the one that I'm most interested in. It's just a really good matchup against the Houston Rockets. We didn't talk about Luka Doncic with guards, but of course he's definitely someone who you always have to consider. But the Rockets defense has been one of the worst in the NBA throughout the year. And if the Mavericks end up shorthanded tonight, 2 things happen. We get a reduced chance of blowout on the one hand, and we also get more minutes for the core players on the other hand. So I just think that there's reason to consider all of these players, but it's definitely worth keeping an eye out for this injury update from the Mavericks.
All right, Jeff, what do you think?
I'm going with Kyle Kuzma at 8,800. Kuzma, he had a subpar outing in his last game, only scoring just over 30 fantasy points. But prior to that, he had scored 47-plus in 5 straight games, including a pair of 60-point performances, which gives me confidence in his ability to bounce back. He's also been one of the Wizards who's seen an expanded usage rate ever since Bradley Beal was ruled out for the year and Spencer Dinwiddie was traded to Dallas. Hasn't dipped under 25% in 6 games, and the Lakers ranked 25th in DraftKings fantasy points allowed to power forward. So pay up for Kuzma in his revenge game, I guess.
All right, Garion, what do we think?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Wendell Carter Jr. He's $7,400, which I think in a vacuum is already too cheap. Carter's been playing much better than his price tag for about 2 months now, and maybe just not getting the respect because he plays for the Orlando Magic. But this is a game that certainly earns having the highest implied point total on the slate tonight. You go back across the last 15 games, it is the Minnesota Timberwolves who rank first in pace, and the Orlando Magic who rank second in pace. And there's actually a pretty sizable gap between first, second, and third in those rankings. So this is going to be a track meet, and Carter Jr. going back to January 30th, so a pretty decent sample size, is averaging 1.22 DraftKings points per minute played. So I just think he's underpriced to begin with, and when you factor in the environment, he should definitely be over 8K. So there's a lot of value baked in here.
All right, Jeff, move on over to centers. Who are you taking here?
I'm going with Rob Williams at 7,100. Isaiah Stewart is one of the only bigs in the league that seems to consistently give Robert Williams problems, but he's out tonight due to a bone bruise, so that doesn't really matter. Rob, he's been a double-double machine lately, and it has translated to fantasy production as he scored 37 plus in 3 of his last 5 games. He's the league leader in blocks per game. He's huge for Boston on both ends of the floor. In my opinion, should be taken more seriously as a defensive player of the year candidate, and he should control the boards here with Beef Stew out.
All right, Matt, where are you going here?
So I think this might be my favorite player for the whole slate at this point. And Jackson Hayes at 4,700, I think is probably the only rotation player on the Pelicans that isn't chalk tonight. So we have Graham, who I mentioned before. Valanciunas, I think, will be popular at center. And then we have guys like Herb Jones and Najee Marshall and Trey Murphy, who I think people will gravitate towards because of their low prices. Jackson Hayes at 4,700 is kind of just in no man's land price-wise. He's a little more expensive than these other players. And he's also played fewer minutes recently, but I think the reason for that is that when the Pelicans get behind in games, they tend to go with a smaller lineup, and that usually means Hayes is not on the court. They don't have that luxury tonight against the Hornets because they're just missing so many players, Ingram, McCollum. And also, the Hornets are a team that's beatable. The Pelicans are still only small underdogs, despite missing their 2 best scorers. So I think there's a chance that Hayes just plays more because the team's doing well with him. Or if Valanciunas gets in foul trouble, you get Hayes playing center that way. So there's just a lot of ways this could work out, and I don't think he'll be especially popular tonight.
All right, Garion, you're looking at centers. Who do you want in your lineup?
Yeah, I feel like I'm just kind of in a staring match with the DK pricing algorithm, like a weird game of chicken with Evan Mobley. I don't know why they continue to just have his price point locked in the low 7K range. We've only got a 2-game sample here. I understand that, but the Cavs have been off for like 3 days. They had a lot of time to look into this and go, oh, Evan Mobley might be playing a bigger role with Jared Allen unavailable, with Karis LeVert unavailable. I know he technically hasn't played 2 full games without Jared Allen, but let's consider that Toronto game where Allen was only able to play about 11 minutes of full contest. Both times he's had 20-point double-doubles, and both times he's gone well over 50 DraftKings points. So until his price point is actually moved, I'm just going to keep playing Evan Mobley in the low 7K range with no Jared Allen.
All right, because of our technical difficulties, we're going to move quick on this last one. We're going to switch gears and look at the DK Sportsbook. So which matchup features the best bets out there today, Matt?
Yeah, the game I'm looking towards is the Hawks-Clippers game. And I think people who have watched the Clippers play recently understand this team is struggling. I'm not sure what the reason is. Maybe the injuries are starting to catch up with them. They did trade for 2 players from the Blazers who are both out of the lineup right now. Norman Powell and Robert Covington aren't playing. And I just think the Hawks continue to be a really undervalued team. John Collins was out for a while. He's back now. The Hawks have had some tough games recently. So I think if you just look at the way these teams have performed over the course of the season, they seem pretty close. But to me, the Hawks are much better here, and only laying 6.5, I think, is a value. So I would bet this probably even if it were higher. I think the Hawks should be double-digit favorites for this game. I just think they're a lot better of a team than the Clippers.
All right, Jeff, where are you going on the Sportsbook?
I like looking at the Cavs and Heat game. The Cavs haven't been playing their best basketball as of late, but they seem to keep every game close, and I like them plus 6.5 here. They also hold a 2-0 edge in the season series versus Miami. The Heat just got dominated by the Suns without Jimmy Butler. If he's not back, or if he's back but less than 100%, I like Cleveland's chances of covering and also winning outright. And we don't have player props for this on the Sportsbook, I think, but my favorite bet as of late has been Jimmy Butler under points, rebounds, and assists. Player props, as I said, they're not up, but assuming his sinus issue clears up and Jimmy plays, the PRA number usually sits around 33.5. He's gone under that specific prop in 7 straight games. He's the most passive superstar I've seen in a while.
All right, Gary, and give us your bet.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that Orlando-Minnesota game. I just think it's going to be a really fun one. There's some point props. There's some rebounding props on Minnesota's side that I do like. But I'm actually going to take the under in this game. That's my favorite bet for this one, despite the fact that these are, like I said, the 2 highest-paced teams in the league by a pretty wide margin the last month and a half. Orlando's fun that way. They are the highest-paced team in the Eastern Conference across their last 15 games. They also have the worst offensive rating in the Eastern Conference across their last 15 games. So I think their total tends to get a little inflated based on their pace. Pace doesn't matter if you can't score. So they've actually gone under in each of their last 4 games. I like this one to go under too. I just think 234.5 is a high number when the Magic are involved.
All right, thank you, fellas. After this break, we're going to talk more basketball, just the college kind. Joining us live from Vegas is DK Nation's Colin Sherwin. Colin, need you to dish out your favorite plays for this weekend's conference tournament games. So a lot of conference tournaments continue, but we're going to focus on a few specific ones here. So what's your favorite matchup today on the board in the SEC tournament?
So last night, for some reason, here at some of these lovely casinos in Southern Nevada, you could get Arkansas -1.5. So if I'm unable to come home, that's why. But it is up to 3, and I still love it. I think people are really not valuing the fact that if you don't have to play on consecutive days in college basketball, you have a massive inherent advantage. This doesn't seem to be getting borne out by the numbers this week. LSU had to play yesterday. They didn't have to play well, but they had to play. Arkansas just beat LSU. Granted, they only beat them by 1 at home, but this is a team that should be able to run LSU off the floor today. And to do it at the conference tournament at this level, I just really like Arkansas. I think this is a game where Arkansas starts to pull away and really makes a run at an SEC championship. This is one of the best teams in the country. When they put it all together, they're better than anybody.
All right, let's talk Big Ten, Colin. Which of these games catches your eye?
So if you can still find some Purdue under double digits, which seems to be floating around, that number's moved a ton. I like it under double digits, but I think right now at DK it's at 11. I would pass on that. I like Iowa first half today. I'm going with the Julian play, the first halfer. Iowa really comes out and just blitzes people early. They do it because they're able to score from the outside, and then they dump the ball into the post. They really do well on that level. The problem is that in the second half, they tend to break down a little bit defensively, and Rutgers has Ron Harper Jr., who I think is one of the best individual go-at-somebody players in the country. So I like Iowa -3.5 first half, but this is a game I'd probably stay away from the second half, or I might even do the flip thing and bet Rutgers in the second half, because the Rutgers is a team that tries real hard, doesn't give up, and they won't today either.
All right, so a number of tournaments are in the semifinal round, Colin, including the Big 12. So who do you like to end up in the final in this one?
In the Big 12, I think you sort of got to go chalk here. I mean, this is Kansas' tournament to lose, especially without Baylor, coming through. I like TCU today +8. I think that's a good play, but in the long run, it's Kansas and everybody else. Texas Tech will make a run here. They'll play hard, but really, honestly, on talent, especially on a neutral court, and neutral being a relative term because they're playing 45 minutes from Kansas' campus. I really like Kansas to win, but it'll be Kansas and Texas Tech, and Kansas will win.
All right, how about the teams to watch in the ACC semis, Colin?
In the ACC, UNC is -2 today. I really like that game. I think UNC is just playing tremendous basketball right now. They showed it last night against Virginia. They can do whatever they need to do when they need to do it. If they need to make threes, they can do that. If they need to throw it down to Backett in the post, they can throw it down to Armando Backett. They can do whatever they want to do. I like UNC. I'm seeing some threes out there. I'm seeing some twos. So somewhere in that range, anything within one possession, I'm willing to lay it today with UNC. And I think they're going to give Duke yet another game in the championship.
All right, Colin, thank you. Enjoy Vegas. Hockey is next here on The Sweat. Don't go anywhere. is a one-man band on our hockey panel today. RotoWire's Paul Bruno here for NHL opening faceoff. So, Paul, 4-game NHL slate tonight. Who is your favorite DFS play at center? By far the most expensive guy going to be Sidney Crosby at $7,500.
Well, because AJ's not here, I'm going to go and talk about Sidney Crosby for a little bit, Jesse, and say he's coming in at $7,500, like you said. I don't like the way Vegas is playing of late. They lost in Buffalo yesterday and didn't look good doing it. And Penguins have only been marginally better, but there's a big advantage at center ice with this matchup in favor of Sid and Evgeny Malkin, for that matter. But so I'm going to go on his price tag and say that's going to be a cornerstone of my team for sure. And I alternatively will consider Mark Scheifele. He's been playing very well of late. Scoring has been back to normal ranges that we've talked about for him in the last few years. Gets a good matchup against the Islanders. This is not your Islanders from the last couple of seasons. Their play has fallen off a little bit, and they're missing Matthew Barzal at center ice. So I think he gets the edge in terms of the quality of opponents that he's going to be facing. Also augments his value, a great price tag, $5,900. And finally, JT Miller. This guy's playing all world caliber hockey right now. 21 points in his last 10 games and averaging 17.7 DraftKings points per night. And you get him for $6,800 in the middle of the other two guys. So there's no bad alternative here. I think I like JT Miller the best of all.
What about the dude that you need on the wing? If you're going to play Crosby, you could pair him with Brian Rust for $7,200.
You certainly could, but I won't. That's enough Pittsburgh talk for me today. I'll say that. Kirill Kaprizov is the guy that jumps off the page for me. $7,700 his price tag. He's been lighting it up against everybody. The quality of opponent is not a top-end one in Columbus. So I like the mismatch against for the hot shooter tonight and think he's going to pile on in that situation. I also like Kyle Connor. Again, going back to Winnipeg, that's the stack that I'm looking at today, Jesse. And Kyle Connor is a guy that's been shooting the lights out. 7 goals and 12 points. He's one of the top goal scorers in the league that nobody's talking about and pouring a ton of shots on goal, 41 in the last 10 games, for example. And then Jonathan Marchessault, I talked about the Vegas situation. The one benefit for him is that he's playing top line minutes with their two other best forwards. And at $5,400, that's a great value for a guy who is a sidekick that's getting a lot of points lately.
All right, hit me with your favorite DFS play on the blue line, Paul.
Well, if you're going to pay up, I'll give you 2 guys that are not at the top end of the board, but they're performing very well. Consider Noah Dobson of the Islanders. It's a bit of a contrarian play because I've been on the Jets a lot and what I've been talking so far, but how can you ignore a guy who's got 9 points from the blue line, 29 shots on goal, averaging 12.5 DK points per game in his last 10, and he's not a guy on the tip of anybody's tongue when you talk about high-scoring defenseman. He should be. And then Quinn Hughes is one of those top-end scoring defensemen. He's cheaper, though, tonight, $5,500 because of the tough matchup against Washington. But look at what he's done all season long, 45 points in 54 games. That speaks for itself to tell you that this is a good value play tonight.
All right, let's wrap things up with your favorite NHL bet on the DK Sportsbook tonight. Where are you going for this one, Paul?
I've got 2 of them in mind. I'm looking at Pittsburgh. They should be all over Vegas tonight with home ice advantage. And so I'll give up the goal and a half to get the plus 155 on the puck line and feel good about that. And of course, whenever I get to this question, I like to go to the alternate total goals bet, taking the over of 7.5 for a 215 payoff in the Minnesota-Columbus game. I think defense will be a rumor in that one tonight.
All right, thank you, Paul. Enjoy your weekend, and you guys will definitely enjoy this next segment. It's Steve Buchanan finally talking baseball. All right, guys, the big news, of course, is that baseball is back, baby. MLB and MLBPA reached an agreement on a new CBA, and now it's time to play ball with Steve Buchanan, who tweeted last night at DraftKings that he is useful again. So, Steve, first off, just like a quick reaction, are you surprised that they were able to reach an agreement here and salvage a 162-game season?
Surprise doesn't even begin to fully comprehend what happened. Shocked is what is more, the better word to use here. Nobody in their right mind can say, yes, they were going to make an agreement. They were going to play a full season. If you say that out loud to anybody, I want you to go home, look in a mirror, and call yourself a liar. Nobody saw this coming, but it's ecstatic that it happened.
All right, so some key points on the new deal. A 45-day window for MLB to implement rules changes. Among them, a pitch clock, ban on shifts, and larger bases in the 2023 season. But for the 2022 season, the National League is adopting the designated hitter. So how much does the universal DH impact DFS?
Absolutely massive. I mean, you got to think about all these prolific players and hitters that can go to the National League. Like, it was only an American League thing, basically forever. And we don't have to suffer through watching these pitchers try to hit and attempt to hit. Some of them don't even go up there and swing the bat. But from a DFS standpoint, some of these guys that are on the bench in the National League are going to be able to hit or have like a full-time role. Guys like Adam Duvall over with the Braves is someone that comes to mind. But this is huge for DFS, especially because you can get some of these guys in there. You don't have to worry about pinch hitting or anything like that. So this is going to be a massive change for DFS as well.
Okay, so Steve, they also agreed to expanding the postseason to 12 teams. So which teams could benefit from that?
Yeah, I mean, some of these teams that are in tough divisions. So the Toronto Blue Jays were a team that immediately came to mind here, playing in the AL East, a very competitive division with the Yankees, Red Sox, and Rays in there. Sorry, Orioles, you're not included in this group. But someone like the Toronto Blue Jays might be able to make it in now. If everything was different last year, they would have been in it last year. Over on the National League side, some teams that are in the NL West might be able to sneak in there, with the Padres, Dodgers, and Giants. So some of these teams that are in super competitive divisions might be able to get in there this year now. So that's a big change, too, for some of these teams that were on the cusp last season.
Okay, so now free agency is going to open again, right? So what are some of the big storylines that we should be following? People were ready for deals to start happening last night.
Nobody wanted to make sure that they were talking to free agents during this whole thing. There was no tampering, is what the illusion they're trying to create right now. But when that first domino falls, I will almost guarantee you are going to see an absolute flurry of announcements for players going to their new teams. But there are not too many strong starting pitchers on the market, but there is a boatload of offensive players in the infield, in the outfield that are going to be signed over the next few days. I mean, they're going to start playing spring training games in less than a week. These are going to come fast and furious over the next couple days.
All right, Steve, thank you for proving how useful you are. And stick around because you're also in the next segment being useful.
Thank you.
All right, I'm joined now by our NFL panel. We have DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich, Pierce Dietrich, and Steve Buchanan here, and it is NFL free agency frenzy time. We're going to give you an NFL player. You're going to tell us the best landing spot for that player when it comes to DFS, okay? These are unrestricted free agents. You got quarterback Jameis Winston. Where do we think the best landing spot for Jameis is, Jeff?
I mean, I think from a fantasy perspective and from a personal perspective, too, to kind of build up his value again, I personally think it would be the Steelers. I mean, what do we know about Jameis Winston? He's pretty much a gambler at heart. He's got a big arm. He likes to use his arm to try and solve his accuracy issues. And who do the Steelers have? Well, they have a pretty cool, second-year tight end, pass-catching tight end in Freiermuth there. They've got Chase Claypool. They've got Deontay Johnson, who gets open at will. They've got the weapons for a guy like Jameis Winston to rack up some good yardage and some good touchdowns. Now, I mean, is he going to succeed as like from a win-loss perspective? That's a different argument. But from a fantasy value perspective, I think the Steelers and Jameis Winston makes a ton of sense. I'd personally like to see that. And, if he goes back to New Orleans, people can think, well, he's familiar with the scheme. New Orleans is going to be a conservative run-first approach on offense because they're going to try and win games with their defense. So I don't really think you're going to get much out of Jameis Winston, much like last year when we didn't get much out of him for fantasy purposes. But with the Steelers, a team who's not very good at running the ball anyways, I think it would be very, very appealing for fantasy.
All right, Pierce, do you agree?
I do. I like the Steelers option. The weapons are there, but the thing that isn't there is the offensive line. And coming off the injury, I don't know if he wants to go and play for that offensive line. He can go to Indianapolis, and they've got a much better offensive line. They need a quarterback. They don't have any draft picks, so they're probably going to have to look to free agency to get a quarterback. So why not spend some of that money? They've got $69 million in cap room. No one is even close to that. Spend some of that money on Jameis. Maybe you go get the former Steeler Juju Smith-Schuster, and you build that offense up.
All right, Steve, what do we think? Jameis Winston, where's he going to end up?
I don't hate him going to the Steelers. I actually think it would be a decent landing spot for him. But that being said, they want a mobile quarterback. They have had this statue in the pocket for the past 15 years. Now, it's not like Jameis Winston can't run. He does have some rushes under his belt, but I think they want a fully mobile quarterback, so I don't think that makes the most sense. I think he just ends up staying in New Orleans, who are in this cap space hell that they're going to be dealing with for the next few years. That's why Sean Payton was like, I ain't dealing with this. I'm out. I'm going to the broadcast booth and talk about other things. I think Jameis Winston should stay with the Saints, though. They need a quarterback whose name is not Taysom Hill. They need somebody who can go downfield, who can do what he does. When healthy, Jameis Winston was on track to having a stellar year. He can do that again if he's healthy this year. I think he needs to stay with the Saints.
All right, Corduroy Patterson coming off a great season. Pierce, where do we see this guy landing? What's the best fantasy spot for him?
How about the Cowboys? They need a running back. They need wide receiver help, and you can kind of kill two birds with one stone by taking Patterson in that spot. Another team that would be interesting is San Francisco. They wanted to sign him last season. They weren't able to get him. Imagine that offense. Debo, you've got a dual-threat quarterback. You've got Mostert and Eli Mitchell at running back, and then you throw Patterson into that mix along with Kittle. That could be a really potent offense.
All right, what do we think? Corduroy Patterson, Steve, where do you like him to land?
God, I keep going back to him going to the Jets. I feel like that's a guy that could really kind of boost that offense. And let me tell you, they need a couple boosts if you're asking me. But this is somebody who can obviously do damage in the backfield. He can catch the ball too. I know we all think of Corduroy Patterson as a running back nowadays, but he is a wide receiver by trade. But, this is a type of guy that the Jets absolutely need to have in this offense if they want any type of, consistency in that offense. So with what we just saw last year with the Falcons, I think Corduroy Patterson would actually be a pretty good fit with the Jets. I just don't know how thrilled he would be, or anybody for that matter, to go to New York.
Yeah, as Steve mentioned, Jeff, he did set an NFL record for playing the most positions listed on the depth chart. So this guy can do it all.
I love Corduroy Patterson. I was so happy last year that he finally got like an every down role where he was kind of used properly, both in the rush game and as a receiver. And, we can bring up these good teams. Like, he'd be interesting in Buffalo, maybe the Rams. Pierce is right. Like, from a scheme perspective, putting him in San Francisco, it would be amazing. But the thing about those teams is how many touches is Corduroy Patterson going to get with the 49ers when they have Ayuk, Deebo Samuel there as well, and Kittle? I mean, it's just not going to lead to, like, a big fantasy total again. I think you've got to look at these scrubby teams like Steve was mentioning, and the Jets definitely could be there. I think Atlanta, just going back to the Atlanta Falcons, is probably his best bet for another high-usage role. I'll throw out the Seahawks, though, too. I mean, there's talk that they don't want to pay up for Rashad Penny. They're not going to have, like, a good quarterback, most likely. So what does that mean? Maybe they want to run the ball a little bit more with Patterson, a lot of dump-off passes. Let him try, let his athleticism try and move the ball a little bit for him. So those spots, the Jets, Atlanta, Seattle, they would be more high-usage roles. But, yeah, he would look so cool on one of these, like, elite teams like San Francisco. So it depends. If you want to see him, like, make a real-life impact, sure, go to one of the better teams. If you need him for fantasy purposes, again, which is what we're talking about, his best bet's going to be to go to one of the cellar dwellers.
All right, Steve, let's talk about Allen Robinson, a dude who's pretty notorious for like bailing out poor quarterback play. Where could you see him landing?
I think the Patriots would be an ideal landing spot for Allen Robinson. You look at that depth chart for the Patriots. I mean, could you really put a wide receiver one title on any of them? You can't. Like, maybe you put it on Jacoby Myers, but if that's your wide receiver one, if he goes to any other team, he's a wide receiver 2/3 at best, almost anywhere else except the Jets. Okay. So now you put Allen Robinson in there, and then that just opens up so much more with some of these guys that were able to do some damage on some limited targets, like a Kendrick Bourne. Aguilar had a couple of good games here and there, but he's not really a deep threat as we saw him before with the Raiders. So I think Allen Robinson would just fit into this Patriot scheme so well, complement some of these other receivers too. They need that wide receiver one. They haven't had that for years, really since Julian Edelman's been out of the mix. So I think Allen Robinson would be a perfect fit here, but as has gone with most of the Patriots offseason, he won't.
Okay, Jeff, Allen Robinson, where do you think he could land? Maybe the Browns? Maybe the Colts? What do we think?
I mean, poor Allen Robinson, hey? Like, those are his options, a team with no quarterback or the Browns. I mean, it seems like it's this every year with this guy. Like, oh, Allen Robinson's available, and he can't attach himself to a good quarterback. So it really does, like, it's looking like the Patriots are going to be his best option, and that's not terrible. Like, it's better than the other teams that we mentioned, I think. And going to the Colts, even if they did sign like a decent quarterback, he's going to be the number two, like Steve mentioned, to Michael Pittman. I mean, Michael Pittman, I think at this point in his career, is probably like the slightly better receiver. Not that Robinson wouldn't make an impact, but one team I would kind of throw it as a dark horse for Allen Robinson is the Denver Broncos. They still have space. And I know, everyone's hot about Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy can't stay on the field. So it actually makes a lot of sense for the Broncos to go out and boost their wide receiver core a little bit, because, I mean, we're at year 3 with especially Sutton. They need a backup plan. They can't bring Russ in and not have a deep receiver core. So I think Allen Robinson could be looking at that, finally wanting to play with an elite quarterback and going to Denver. But the Patriots, from a money perspective, from a need perspective, they do make the most sense.
Pierce, what about the Jags?
That's exactly where he is going.
Thank you.
Back to Jacksonville. They've got a quarterback. They've got a receiver. They're going to improve their line in the draft. What do they need? A receiver. They need a veteran presence. You bring in Allen Robinson. Also, ownership needs to win back these fans. The best thing that they can do is bring back Allen Robinson and convince these fans that that they're not such poor, crummy owners.
Okay, Emerson, sure.
I know we had to get to that when Emerson wasn't here. Jeff, what about Zach Ertz? Where do you see the tight end landing?
So, I mean, again, this one kind of comes down to, what is it, best for real life purposes or best for fantasy?
I guess for
fantasy purposes, I think Jacksonville is actually the best spot for Zach Ertz. At this point in his career, where else is Zach Ertz going to get like 8+ targets a game? And let's not forget, when Dan Arnold went to play with Trevor Lawrence this year, he saw over 7 targets in 4 of his 7 games with the Jaguars. So he's heavily targeted, which is the point I'm trying to get across. That's probably one of the only spots where Ertz is going to get consistent targeting. He goes to a spot like Denver or the Colts. He's going to be more of a secondary or tertiary option. So from a fantasy perspective, the best spot for him is Jacksonville. From a real life perspective, he wants to win or help out a team. I think Denver going with Russ would be interesting too.
All right, Pierce, what do you think?
Jacksonville is going to go back to his former coach in Doug Peterson. And if it's not that former coach, then it's his other former coach in Indianapolis, and Frank Wright, who likes him a lot. And we saw Frank Wright bring in former Philadelphia Eagle Carson Wentz. So I imagine he's going to try to get ownership to go after Ertz as well.
All right, Steve, Zach Ertz, what do we think?
I think there's nothing wrong with him going back to Arizona. Like, I know we have all this drama with Kyler Murray going on. Where's he going to go? Deleting everything on social media. Oh my God, the horror of somebody deleting stuff off social media. It's like when you break up with your girlfriend and you take down the pictures, here comes the flurries of DMs. That's what happened when Kyler Murray deleted all the stuff about the Cardinals. But with that being said, have we seen that type of Zach Ertz really over the past years than we saw when he joined the Arizona Cardinals? He was a relevant part of that offense. They schemed things to go his way. He was a massive red zone target, which is something he wasn't getting while he was in Philly. Everything seemed to click when he went to Arizona. There's no need to change anything as it is. Arizona needs receivers. Zach Ertz was a huge part of that plan. He should stick with Arizona.
Okay, Steve, who do you think could be the most impactful free agent out there? And this doesn't have to be like DFS related. This could just be overall.
Allen Robinson, once again, going back to him. Don't take what we saw this past season as to what Allen Robinson is. He is not somebody that should be making 38 catches for 410 total yards with the Bears. This is somebody who's gone over 1,000 receiving yards 4 times in his career. This is somebody we've seen go over double digits in touchdowns. He is going to make a difference maker when there's a team that actually wants him to play on the field and he's actually happy with, because when you have a happy, healthy Allen Robinson, you are going to get things done on the field. Allen Robinson is going to be a difference maker because he's going to be somewhere where he wants to be, and that team wants him there as well.
Jeff, most impactful free agent out there.
I mean, I think the most impactful free agents are actually like either a tackle in Teron Armstead or on defense with like J.C. Jackson. But since this is a fantasy show and like all we really care about is the offensive players, I'm going to say it's going to be one of Mitch Trubisky or Marcus Mariota. I think both of these quarterbacks have been severely undervalued by the media just in terms of their upside. And I think that the team that takes a shot on one of them and tries to rebuild them a little bit is going to be handsomely rewarded. These guys are probably going to be undervalued from a contract perspective. And I think that the fact they can both run a little bit, they're both mobile in today's NFL. I think the team that commits and puts a little bit of, athleticism at receiver around them, I think that, one of these guys is going to have a big impact for a team that perhaps no one's thinking about right now.
All right, Pierce, talk to me.
It's Teron Armstead. Jeff mentioned him and how he wouldn't have a fantasy impact, but he does. He has a bigger fantasy impact than anybody. He's one of the best, if not the best lineman in the league. Somehow he is a free agent. That's because, as Steve mentioned earlier, the Saints have all kinds of cap problems. So now he's going to go somewhere else, and wherever he ends up, the quarterback, the wide receiver, the running backs for those teams will immediately see a major fantasy boost. PFF has him as the #1 free agent. Whoever lands him is going to be a contender.
I'm going to captain Armstead in my first showdown next year. That's how big of an impact he's going to have.
We're going to hold you to that, Jeff.
Okay.
Mark the tape, please. Thank you, fellas. One more block to go here on the Sweat. Pierce and Jeff, you guys are breaking down the Ruoff Mortgage 500 in Arizona, so please stay with us.
Oh, yep.
Final block of the show on this Friday. I am here with DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich and Pierce Dietrich. They're weighing in on the Ruoff Mortgage 500 in Arizona. So Pierce, Kyle Larson, once again on top of the salary board for this event, $11,800. He's only one of 5 drivers priced over $10K. So do you like any of these high-priced options? Is it Kyle Larson again?
Well, let's go a little bit below the high price, down to $9,800 with Martin Truex. Last season, he was the best driver at Phoenix. No one could compete with his long-run speed. I do expect this race to end with a short run, so he wouldn't be my pick to win, but there will be long runs. And over the course of those long runs, he'll lead laps, he'll earn fast laps, and he's going to be a big play in DFS.
Jeff, how do we feel about Martin Truex Jr.?
I mean, I don't know. Sounds good what Pierce was saying. I'm going to go with Joey Logano at 10-4. I mean, he's been up there. He's had some pretty solid results. He's been strong at Phoenix over his career. He's won here twice before. 7 top 5 finishes in Phoenix during his career. Had a nice little result there in the spring as well. I don't think he's going to be super highly owned, too. I mean, we're talking DFS, so I'll try and bring some strategy into it. I think people are going to be flocking to Kyle Larson, probably looking to guys like Truex Jr., to save a little cash. But I think Joey Logano is in a spot here where he could be a bit of a sneaky winner. I'm going to make him my pay-up option.
Okay, so we've got some pay-up options. Let's talk about value now. Pierce, which driver is going to provide that for you?
Cole Custer is pretty cheap. He finished 11th at Fontana, flirted with the top 5 in that race, but some bad restarts and bad pit stops dropped him back. His engine expired last week, so he got a poor finish. You look at 2 of his 4 races at Phoenix, he finished 9th and 13th. I'll take that. And if you want to go really cheap, Todd Gilliland at $4,900 punt. He's got a top 25 finish in his last 2 races. He's going out there and playing it safe, not trying to do anything crazy while people are wrecking around him. And through attrition, he just moves his place forward. And he also participated in the January test session at Phoenix, so he should be familiar with this package at this racetrack.
All right, Jeff, what do you think about that value play?
So Cole Custer is definitely interesting. I mean, he seems like, last week I know a lot of people were interested in him, and I think he was heavier He was priced higher, excuse me, is what I was going to say, than last week. I think Pierce already mentioned that. But he seems like a bit of a boomer bust option, but I mean, someone you definitely want to get on at 6,200. I think there's value in like the 7K range this week. I like Austin Cendrick. I mean, it's a player who's competed in Phoenix a couple times, like in the Xfinity Series. He just won the Daytona 500. I don't know how much more we need to see from him necessarily, but just feels like he's going under the radar here this week. He's also 50-1, I believe, on the DraftKings Sportsbook. You got his teammates, like Logano, Ryan Blaney has been running fast. So, I mean, the team's doing good. This guy can drive the car, Jesse. I mean, I think he's going under the radar at 7,700. That's kind of my value-ish pick there.
This guy can drive the car. I like that. Over on the DK Sportsbook, guys, there's the weekly special tab. So we've got the Arizona's Finest special, where you can get a prop on Arizona-born drivers, Alex Bowman and Michael McDowell, to both finish in the top 10 at plus 2,200. Do you think that could happen, Pierce?
Well, first of all, I really like that Austin Cendrick pick. I don't think I was giving him enough consideration. So I'm going to look back at that one. So that's
wow!
Right.
Yeah. Now, a pick that I don't like is this Bowman play. Bowman has struggled at this racetrack. He shouldn't. This suits his driving style, and maybe this will be the weekend that he figures it out finally. But other people have already figured it out. So just because he finally gets the rhythm of this track, well, he's got to beat other people that have had the rhythm. And then Michael McDowell's barely a top 20 driver, so I don't like that. But I like Jeff's.
Jeff, that's great. Pierce likes your value pick. What do you think about this weekly special?
I mean, it's pretty big odds, right? Like plus 2,200, but it is big odds for a reason. I mean, Michael McDowell, I mean, reading up, he's obviously the local guy. And I mean, it sounds like he's in a pretty good headspace coming into the week, but the results haven't been there. I mean, so you need him to pop this week if you're going to hit this bet. And then, Alex Bowman, obviously coming off the win last week, but as Pierce mentioned, I mean, he seems to come to this track every year from what I've read and like do nothing. So, I mean, you kind of need two guys to perform outside of their, where they're kind of just in their zone right now, and especially at this track. So there's probably better bets out there. I would just listen to who Pierce and I recommend for our placing picks than going on this one. If you want to sprinkle on something, maybe give my guy Cendrick a little look at 50-1 in the outright or something.
All right, Pierce, favorite play for a top 5 or top 10 finish this week?
Denny Hamlin at minus 120. I know it's not a big payout, but it's pretty safe. 6 top 5s in his last 8 races at Phoenix. You look over that span, he's averaging 20 hog points per race. When I say hog points, I mean fast laps and laps led points. And those points typically go to fast drivers in fast cars. And he's consistently done that at Phoenix in several different packages. They've changed packages every single season almost. And there he is in the top 5, running up front, leading laps, running fast laps every single time.
Jeff, what do we think?
So I'm going to go with a couple guys for placing here. Cole Custer at plus 350, top 10 finish. I mean, we already mentioned him. He was running up with the leaders for a lot of laps last week. And then again, Cendrick at plus 500 for a top 5. I mean, he's had good results here. He's in a fast car. I mean, this seems like pretty good odds on both of them. So no guarantees here. They're a little bit boomer bust options, but I mean, I think you're getting good odds to chase both those guys in the placing this week.
All right, Pierce, who is the winner of the Ruoff Mortgage 500? Lay it on me.
It is Joey Logano. He was great here last spring. In 4 of the last 5 races at Phoenix, he's averaged 43 hog points per race. That's a lot. He is fast. You look at the last 4 races, he's finished 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And recently at the short flat track in the LA Coliseum, he won in this package.
All right, Jeff, what do we think?
Look, every week I keep trying to add to my NASCAR repertoire, and every week Pierce brings up things like these hog point. I don't know what he's talking about, but I'm going to have to research that for this week. But guess what? Guess what my research led me to this week? It was
What?
Joey Logano. We're on the same guy, Pierce. Plus 900. I think he's great value as well. I'm going to throw out Eric Amarola as a long shot. This dude's retiring. He's got good results in Phoenix as well. He's been top 10 in like every single race. He paid off for us. He's plus 2,500. So if you want to sprinkle on a long shot, I'd go there. Mention the placing guys with Cendrick and Custer. But yeah, I got a full NASCAR card this week, Jess. I could not be more excited.
And Pierce looked like he thought your long shot pick wasn't bad. So,
I mean, I'm
I like
improving.
Amarola.
Like I said, I have more research to do. I'm working it out, but
On a roll. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And don't forget, Line Drop the Bracket is coming this Sunday. Make sure you tune into the Ultimate Bracket Reveal show. It is called Line Drop the Bracket. It starts at 6 p.m. Eastern on Selection Sunday. We're going to reveal all the lines for the first round of the NCAA tournament as the selections unfold. I'm going to be your host, along with our DK analysts, members of Dan Lebitard and Friends, and experts at VSiN. We're going to bring you the ultimate bracket betting experience. Tune into VSiN or any of our social media channels starting at 6 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. We will be trying to make sense of the madness. All right, Madden starts at noon here. That is a show for us. The slate is at 5 p.m. It's going to be Kaufman with LaMarca. They're going to be talking about the NBA. Like I said, tune in on Sunday, and then the Sweat will be back on Monday. Have a great weekend.